All right, guys, welcome back to another video. Stories of my father, and I appreciate you guys listening. I like and enjoying going back and reliving some of these memories, and these are some very pivotal points in my life. Like I said, coming up on my father's anniversary of his death, 11/14/11, and my mom's, which is 11/13/19, almost to the day, 8 years later. But my dad formed who I was. Like I said before, he wasn't a perfect person. He was an alcoholic his whole life. I lived with that, and it caused him a lot of problems. And but like I said before, you don't have to be the perfect parent in order to instill some values and some lessons into your children, even if you're a flawed individual. So take these stories as what they are, is just they formed who I was, and hopefully you guys get some value out of it and learn something from it. I'm a thirster of knowledge, so I love hearing people's backstories. I watch a lot of interviews, listen to a lot of podcasts, and I try to learn from other people's lives. And if you do the same, you will become a more well-rounded, more informed person. So, all right, we'll take you back now. I said I wanted to take you back way early in my childhood. This goes all the way back to the beginning. This is when I'm 10 years old, and my parents are getting divorced. So my real mom, my birth mom, and my father. This is the divorce. And 10 years old, like I said, they were both heavy drinkers, alcoholics. A lot of arguing, a lot of fighting. Overheard a lot of that as I was a child. Screaming matches. They got physical with each other. The whole 9 yards. And as a 10-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, going through that, it's not fun. It's hell on earth, and it's one of the biggest reasons why, when I became a single father, and I'll get to maybe that story next. When I became a single father of my daughter, I made sure that she did not have that anger in the house and that dysfunction in the house with alcoholism and people fighting in the house all the time. So yeah, we're getting divorced. My dad's, I'll never forget this day. This is another day that I'll never forget. A lesson that I learned is he sat me down on the steps of our house. It's 28th and Lincoln. The house is still there to this day. It's a duplex. I drive by it occasionally when I'm in Milwaukee, and brings back a lot of memories. But sat me down on the steps, and it told me that he was going to be moving out and that they were getting a divorce. And I'm 10 years old. And this is something that my dad did throughout his life. He would sit you down and have a conversation face to face with you. The kitchen table was a place where we talked about a lot of things, good, bad, and otherwise. We worked out our differences. He instilled discipline to me. He had stern talks with me at the kitchen table. We had a lot of laughs at that kitchen table. We had a lot of good times at that kitchen table, playing Monopoly and just a lot of good times. But we also had times where he would just sit you down and man to man have a conversation. And it was very interesting because I'm 10 years old. He could have easily just left. I knew there was problems. I'm not a dumb 10-year-old kid. I can hear the arguments. I can hear the dysfunction. He could have just left. But he wanted to sit me down and tell me himself, you know, your mom and I are not getting along. You know this. You hear this. We have some things that we need to work out, but I'm going to move out. But the one thing he told me is that I'm going to be back for you and your sister. So I had a sister that was 1 year younger than me. So I'm going to be back for you and your sister. I'm coming back for you guys. And he said, I want you guys to live with me. Now, at the time, I don't know what was going on between the two of them. I'm sure they were both guilty of a lot of things, but there was times when my mom would be gone for 3-4 days at a time and would not come back. I overheard the phone conversations, what was going on. So I'm not here to cast blame on either one of them, but it was no shock to me that my dad was leaving. But still, when your father sits you down at 10 years old and tells you they're getting a divorce and he's going to be leaving, that's a very big shock to a kid. And for me, I was closer to my dad. And my dad was a sense of safety, and my dad was always there. When my mom would be gone for 3-4 days at a time, my dad was there. I remember my dad taking me, because my mom was off. I don't know what she was doing, but my dad would take me to work. I remember he was a truck driver for Dubuque Packing in Milwaukee, and he had to take a run out to Dubuque. I remember riding with him in the truck, him taking me in the truck with him. So my dad was always there. So set us down, talks about the divorce, tells me about the divorce, but he says, I'm going to be back for you guys. I'm coming back to get you guys. I want you guys to live with me. So he moves out, and now during this period of time, what happens is I'm living with my mom. Me and my sister are. We're living in a cockroach-infested house, living on food stamps, extremely poor. My mom's not working. She's out doing all kinds of things, leaving us with babysitters, and this is where I get exposed to alcohol and dysfunction at 10 years of age. This is where I'm also assaulted on 3 separate occasions. And one is by my babysitter. My babysitter introduced me to alcohol. My babysitter introduced me to marijuana at a very young age. So this is where all this early stuff in my life happens, where I go through some of the most horrifying things that a child at 10 years of age could go through, while my dad has moved out and my mom is not, how should I put this? She's not making sure that her kids are well taken care of. So my father, I can imagine how he felt. He was so helpless because he was not there, and yet he chose to leave. But then he couldn't be there 24/7 with me. I was able to go over to his house on weekends, but during the week I had to be with my mom. So I can imagine how he felt, being helpless and not being able to be there, because we can't be there for 24/7 for our kids, right? We try to protect them as much as we can, but I think he had an understanding that you're with your mother, you'll be okay. And this actually comes into play later in my life when I split up with the mother of my child and go back to live with him and my mom, and I'm having my daughter come to my house to visit on weekends, but then she's going back by her mom's initially during the week, until I went to court and fought for custody and won sole custody and sole placement of her. And I was distraught because I was worried what could happen while she's with my drug addict ex. And so this all comes into play. It's a big circle, because I remember back, when I think back, and my dad would say, well, she's with her mother. Like, there's nothing bad. She's not going to do anything bad to her. Nothing bad's going to happen to her. And I'm thinking back, yeah, but Dad, but when you left and I was with Mom, 3 horrific things happened to me during that time. So you can understand why I'm a bit like, I'm not going to leave her with a dysfunctional person, and I'm worried about leaving her. I mean, I was in tears when I was having this discussion with my dad, and I'm, 28 years of age. So my dad leaves, but he says, I'm coming back to get you, and sure as everything, and this is part of my dad, is when he said he was going to do something, for the most part, he came through on it. So what ends up happening is, when I get to be 12 years of age, my dad fights for custody, and I end up getting to go live by my father. My sister couldn't come with me because she was still 11. She wasn't able to decide for herself. In the courts, when you're 12, you can decide for yourself where you want to live, back then at least. And so she had to stay, but I was able to go live with my dad. And and I remember the intense relief I felt being able to go live with my dad, because full time, because I was over there on weekends and whatnot. But going over and being able to live with my dad completely changed my life. And this again circles back to later in my life, when I'm 28 years old, split up from my child's mother, and go to get full custody of her, win that in court, and she gets to come live with me full-time, full placement, full custody, because I did the same thing my dad did, and I was not going to allow my child to A, grow up in that dysfunction while I'm not there, and B, have the potential of something drastically bad happening to them while I can't be there and they are under the so-called care of their parent. So the thing that I learned about this from my father is, one, when you tell someone you're going to come get them, you're going to come do this for them, you're going to be there for them, you hang on to that commitment. And I'm one of the most loyal people out there, and people will tell you this, that I'll be there for you. And my dad taught this to me, but he also taught me that divorce sucks. And I tell people that tell me they're thinking about going through divorce and they have young kids, I tell them, at the time I would have said, yeah, get out, because it's not, you shouldn't live unhappy, right? But nowadays I say, stay. Because I went through 3 horrific abuse incidents during that time, and divorce is hell on kids. Divorce is hell on kids. And the problem is you may be a good person, but you don't know how the other person's going to be, and you don't know what kind of care the other person's going to be under, because you can't be there. But if you're still married, at least you have some control on the care of the children and making sure that the children are safe and the children that are well cared for. So I tell people that are thinking about divorce now, absolutely not. And I don't care if you're unhappy, and I don't care if, your wife or husband doesn't treat you well. I mean, unless there's physical abuse going on that you don't want the children to be exposed to, because that can mess up a child as well. If there's no physical abuse, you need to stick it out for the kids, 100%. And that's what I learned from my dad, is that, one, you say what you mean and you do what you say you're going to do. And number 2 is that you protect your children at all costs. And sometimes that means you have to stay in a marriage that you absolutely hate being in, but you made a commitment to these 2 children, these 3 children, these 4 children. You made a commitment for the safety of those children. And so those are the things that I learned from my father's divorce and my mom's divorce. All right. That's a deep one. That one goes very, very, very deep for me, but I'm going to move next, fast forward to a very later part of my life, when I just got custody of my child, and I was still mentally dealing with the ramifications of finding out that a relationship that I thought was going to last the rest of my life, and I was going to marry the mother of my child, it didn't work out that way. And how my father again pulled me aside, sat me down, and instituted some real deep, hard lesson on me that would change the course of my life. Would change the course of my life in a positive way. So, all right, guys. Love you guys. Thanks for watching.